says I've been very lucky.
Yes.
So what I want to do in this brief talk, and then hopefully have some Q&A as well with everybody there to answer their questions, is, well, how do you, when you're at university, when you're in further education, how do you get ready and prepare yourself to be put in a position to be lucky? I mean, it's all very well talking about the skills, and I will talk about those that employers look for, the more modern skills that we're looking for, how to make yourself more employable. But actually, even broader than that, I've been very lucky. How do you put yourself in a position to overachieve? I don't just want to say to you, hey, if you sit these exams, you can get a job in private equity, which is my background, in hedge funds, which is my background, asset management, finance, or law. I trained as a barrister originally. That's fine. But what we really all want to do, we want to overachieve. We want to work X and get 10X results. I'm in business now. I certainly want 10X results. That's got to be the way. The return on investment cannot be 1 for 1 ever. It has to be 10X. So how do we put ourselves in a position to be as lucky? And some of those pictures well, I consider them my good fortune. You may not. You may think, well, not really bothered. That doesn't matter. It's really what we tell ourselves which will really matter in our lives. And I say lucky because that's not exactly the home I grew up in, but it was just like that up in Armley in Leeds. So the luck didn't come from a silver spoon. It didn't come from some very highly networked family. It did not come from connections. It did not come from a family which had for generations been in law or finance. None of those things. So if we take as read that we can overachieve, and I'm going to use that term for what I've done, and you may say, no, Alpesh, you're being, what do they call it on TikTok? Something humble. Falsely humble. No. It has been, I have always tried to overachieve. The reason is, like I said, I want to put in effort 1 and I want to get 10 times the results. And I certainly don't want the opposite, which is underachieve. So how might we go about that? And I say this just to give you a little bit of background. I'll talk about my government work as well in a second. I never thought when I was at university that I would be representing my country. I'd never intended to. But those opportunities came about. So we want to know, well, wait a minute, how do we get in a position where there's more doors open to us so we can choose? And if we've got more choice, then we've got more opportunity to be successful, and we've got more opportunity to overachieve or make our lives more productive, more fulfilling, because we've got more doors open to us, obviously. And for me, like I say, when you can see the pictures there, that had opened up the things which are important to me. They might not be important to you, but what was important to me was working with my government, working abroad, because I really wanted to do that. So I got to see different facets. So I cover as what's known as a deal maker for the UK government. And that's what it actually, believe it or not, really does say that. Oh, I've got one for a change. I don't normally have the card on my desk. There you go. I don't know if you can see that. It might be a bit small. It does really say that on the business card. Which always puts a smile on my face because it seems an improbable title to have for anybody other than Donald Trump, deal maker. And what that role entails is I look for outstanding technologies from around the world which are backed by outstanding entrepreneurs with a view to landing their global headquarters in the United Kingdom, doing the deals to land their headquarters in the UK. And these are scale-ups. These are not the big giant companies, but the scale-up companies. And we want the ones which are solving some of the biggest problems in the world. And I guess, again, it might sound, I don't do humility. I don't do fake humility. So this is not sort of me sort of saying, yeah, you know, it really is lots of hard work. That really is what it is. Where it says what I actually do, the bottom right-hand corner, it does feel like that. You see the Instagram version in the other boxes and what's in my own imagination. But yeah, of course there's lots of hard work, and don't be fooled. And you all know now with the social media age that the image that you might see is very different to what goes on. However, it's fulfilling. And so how do we make sure we get those doors opened? What are the skills that we need, especially at this young age, which you all are who are listening to this, so that you've got all that runway to get it right now? You certainly don't want to be trying to get it right 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Okay, so those are the things I'll cover. One other thing that I'm going to mention, and I want you to keep in mind with all of this, is that in your later years, not in your 20s, but in your 30s and 40s, you'll be concerned more about purpose and fulfillment in life. Although it's said that millennials and generation, I forget which gen we're all in now, Gen Z and millennials are, I say we, I'm clearly not in either of those, they're more concerned about purpose. And I would say, think about that sooner. It used to be the case that you became an accountant, became a lawyer, a doctor, forget purpose. You just did the job, paid the bills, put food on the table, had your holiday a year, and that was it. Okay, people aren't satisfied with that. So plan for purpose sooner, and I'll show you that now. I happen to be chairman of this organization, which helps widows and orphans. The reason I mention that is this, and again, it's not to say, oh, look, here's me virtue signaling. It's because I knew from my 20s, when I used to speak to fellow lawyers, when I was practicing originally as a barrister, the ones who were a few years ahead had become so sort of jaded by their profession. They thought, this is all I ever want to do. And then they got the fast car and the mortgage and the house and all the things they thought they wanted, Louis Vuitton handbags or whatever else it was. And it wasn't enough. And it wasn't one person, it was virtually all of them. The late hours, the long hours, none of it was worth it. The ones that I found where it was worth it, whatever they were doing, was when they felt they had a purpose. And that purpose didn't have to come from their work. Ideally it should, but it might come from other things. So I knew from my early 20s when I was at university, I better have something beyond just finance. And thank God, because finance is the most useless profession in the world. When it's not destroying the world, it's just shuffling paper anyway. So I knew I wanted to have other things. So I'd say, I don't know what your things will be, but do apply your mind to some of it. So on this journey of what are the skills, soft and hard skills you'll want, how do you get yourself in a position to be lucky and doors open up for you and overachieve? Let me just give you a bit of context. For me, and it's really important to know yourself and what ticks for you rather than trying to be somebody else. For me, I didn't want to do a paper route. Okay, but I didn't have any money and neither did my family. So I had to find some other way. So for me, I got into investing. I borrowed £100 from an aunt and I got into investing in stocks during the privatization. Now, you can't mimic that. You got to find what's going to work for you, what really makes you passionate. And you know, the Japanese, I'm sure you all know, and I can't remember the phrase, but they have a term where if you can mix what you enjoy and what earns money and has a bigger purpose in life, if you can get to the center of that Venn diagram of those three circles and you can get where they intersect, that's it, you're made for life. And I was lucky because I found that it doesn't take a sort of a flash of lightning. It will take time to work that out and a lot of introspection and a lot of knowing yourself. But find out those areas which work. And you won't necessarily get it in your 20s. It'll take time, but at least if your brain is thinking about it constantly. For me, I knew certain things were incredibly important. I have a business coach. I was talking to him this morning, and the same things are still important. For me, not necessarily for you. For me, control, i.e., I don't want somebody else telling me what to do. I hate it. You know, I'm pretty rubbish. As an employee, I would be rubbish. I wanted to be self-employed. I wanted freedom. Okay, I wanted freedom to do what I wanted when I wanted. And so your life sort of, and this talk will lead you to that, sort of takes you in those directions. You go towards things which are more like that and try and avoid making decisions which take you away from the things which are most important to you. So you need to know yourself and work out, well, what is actually very important to you? That's how I got into writing books. Again, it started at a very early age, planning for that, thinking about that, because I knew that was self-employment, that was freedom. I've written 18, they're over my shoulder, and some became international bestsellers, even though I was told at school I had a problem with my English, and then at university as well. They were probably right, but I improved upon it. So there is that, obviously, the old story you've heard about determination. And if a problem's pointed out to you, look at a way of solving it. And I'll come to those skills that you'll need, those softer skills for overachievement in a second, as I said. But knowing that I wanted that self-employment, I wanted that freedom, that's what led me to be a barrister. Now, for you, it'll be something else. If you don't follow those things, there will be a gap between what your mind, your conscience, your soul, dare I say it, wants, and what you do. Now, you might say, well, Alpesh, that just sounds like an entitled, spoiled, privileged person. You know, I've already told you I had no silver spoon. I didn't have any of those things. So it wasn't just, oh, I woke up one morning and said, oh yes, I think I'll lead a life of leisure and just do what I want, wake up when I want. No, I went towards professions which fitted and suited my personality, my skills, the qualities that I knew I had, and the things that I would enjoy, always thinking about those concentric circles. What would I enjoy? What will also pay? And what might lead to a bigger purpose? And it was a million little steps along the way, which took me there. I kept up that interest in finance, even though I qualified as a barrister, which then opened up the opportunity to write the books on investing, which opened up the doors. And we'll come to opening up doors again, as I said, in a second, but opened up the doors to TV programs, newspaper columns. But I'll give you the specifics, because generally talking about somebody's CV, people always wonder, well, how do you go about doing that? How do you replicate that? Not in how did you do it, because I can't replicate that, can't get a time machine and copy you, but how might I do it in a more generic term for whatever I want to do, whatever it might be. You might want to be a Formula One racer for all I know, or get in that profession. What are the meta skills, as it were, for that? And that's what I'd like to touch upon now. Now, for me, I knew money was going to be important, because trust me, when you don't have it, you know how important it is. And I knew that self-employment, as I said, in that freedom. So it took me in those directions of investing, writing, being a barrister, self-employed. The reason I learned about investing, you might not want to, and that's fine. But I suggest everybody should have some knowledge of that, because that's your retirement, that's your pension. That's the thing which will allow you at some point, and if you look at what's happening in the news with P&O, it'll allow you at some point the freedom to be able to say to someone, maybe your employer preferably, F you. The ability to say that to people, to have that freedom, that is not just empowering, not just soul enhancing, but it is going to be critical to what you will define as success. The ability to be able, it sounds a bit rude, F you, okay? And to be able to do that, I'm afraid, takes money. To be able to get money and make it work for you needs some knowledge of investments. Whether you're in law, dentistry, accounting, doesn't matter. If your money doesn't work hard for you through investments that you make on the side, then you'll have less of it than others, and you'll be trapped in being on that rat race or wage cycle forever. So I'm a big proponent of people learning how to invest, and I'll come to that in a second. So let me talk about the other two bits, the job skills, the really bits you want to know. What is it that employers like me? I have an asset management company, which I set up in 2004, got a private equity arm, and we've got a hedge fund arm. Now, what is it that we might look for? How can we employed, I think one of my earliest employees was somebody who left university with an English literature degree at the age of 21. She came to work for me for 2 years, and she now manages about $10 billion for Polar Capital. How the hell do you go from 21 doing that, an English literature and an opera singer on the side she was, to then managing 10 billion as an asset manager? So what were the skills we found in people like her? Another one we had, Susan Monahan, she's now global head of communications at Wells Fargo. She was my secretary. What was it that we were looking for in these people, knowing full well they better be good enough to leave us for a $10 billion asset management job, or Wells Fargo, or wherever else all the others have gone. They've gone to become, from being my assistants to being lawyers, to being running family offices, and so on and so forth. Okay, so what were those other skills we were looking for? And those skills, not just what we're looking for, what do you care about what we're looking for? They're the things I know other employers are looking for as well. And they're the things which you can start preparing for now. Okay, the other point I want to make is this. I didn't know my life was going to turn out this way. And I think it's all right now. And I think your generation are happier now to know their life doesn't have to be a conveyor belt, that by this age you will join a firm, and then by the certain age you'll be a partner, and by a certain other age you let life and those opportunities come to you, and some of you'll be happy. Some of you will want that. You'll want the conveyor belt, nothing wrong with that. Others will want the excitement of not actually knowing. I don't know what's going to happen. I certainly, when I thought I was going to be a lawyer, didn't think I'd be advising the Prime Minister. I didn't think I'd have my own TV show. So what were those critical factors? These are my top tips for overachievement and the soft skills that at university, I think you should really pick up and focus on. Number one for overachievement, I'm afraid it's public speaking. Now, before you think, well, that's easy for you to say, Alpesh, Mr. Trained Barrister, TV presenter. Actually, I was the shyest boy at school. Okay, there was nobody more shy than I was. I don't think I spoke to girls until I was about 17. Yeah, until I was about 17. Way too shy. I'm still an introvert. All of this is just an act. Thankfully, I was taught theatre at school, so I knew I could act. Luckily, I also look like George Clooney, so it's easier for me to behave like him as well and act. I think it's all on audio mute, because that would have just got a complete round of applause, that last one. But honestly, public speaking, when you're on stage, you get noticed. You get asked to do things. People assume you're a leader. People assume you're an expert. You overachieve. And you can fill those boots up, or you may indeed already be an expert and a leader. Well, how awful would it be if you were those things that you never got noticed? So you better get on stage. And if you're not those things, but you aspire to be and you've got ambition, then you better get on stage. So either way, you're going to have to do it. My wife in the Department for International Trade is global head of venture capital. So she deals with all the big sovereign wealth funds and brings in billions into the United Kingdom. And I asked her, what's the one thing you want in your employees in the civil service, in the Department for International Trade? You're dealing with, all these sovereign wealth funds, the Saudi sovereign wealth fund, Singaporean one, Temasek, and all of this. By the way, at this point, you're probably thinking we should have had her, not him. But yeah, she's got an amazing Rolodex. And she said to me, you know what really annoys her? The number of her staff who say, oh, we don't do social media. We don't promote that. Oh, no, sorry, we don't do that. I know, I wouldn't believe that the civil service wanted staff who could do social media either. The world's moved on. I'm afraid they do. That, oh no, I'm reticent. I just want to sit in the corner. No, I'm afraid an employer's going to think you better be bloody good at making tea then. You better make the best tea in the world, because if you can't do the other soft skills, what the hell have I got you for? Exam results won't carry the day. I will put first-class degrees at the top of the pile, obviously. If you've got a Nobel Prize, you go at the top of that pile. But short of those things, you're going to need other things, right? So, and you might think, well, I don't know where to start. Practice. There's TED Talks. Learn humor. Learn about storytelling. These are not things I don't think are still taught at university. I still don't think these things are taught at university. In the Q&A, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think they're sort of extracurricular classes. There's no excuse for it. I think it's either Harvard or Yale or one of those Ivy League ones. They've got a whole set of, or it might be Chicago Booth, I forget which one. Anyway, on YouTube, they've got a whole set of lectures which are filmed, 1 hour, 24 minutes on public speaking, on writing and all of this. But there's others. It really is important. I want to see that on the CV, because I want an employee who doesn't just get the Excel spreadsheet and the discount cash flows done. But if they can represent my firm and they're good amongst a crowd and they hit the ground running, hey, that ticks a lot of boxes. And in a competitive world where everybody seems to have the same degree and all the rest of it, that's really going to help. Learn brevity. Ironic, you might say, given this talk. But learn brevity. TikTok's good for it. You might think, what the hell is he smoking? What's he talking about? Other than the fact that Investors Chronicle and Business Insider have covered my TikTok. I say, wait a minute, this is a grown-ass man. He looks like he's already in his 70s and he's talking about TikTok to us? No, he's lost the plot. When I was doing my show on Bloomberg Television on investing, and by the way I got lucky enough to do that is I wrote a book on finance. When you write a book, TV companies want to interview you because you've written a book. And when they interview you, you might get lucky, and this was genuine luck, which can't be replicated. The global head of TV at Bloomberg happened to see that and said, would you like your own show? Well, that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't done the soft skill of being able to write, learn how to write and write well and get things published, because they'll get you noticed, whether it's on LinkedIn or elsewhere. I know it takes time and it's a pain in the ass. But do you want to put yourself in a position to be lucky or not? Get those things out there, and your employer will look at your LinkedIn articles as well to see, yeah, this is somebody who goes out there. They make the extra bit of effort. They've got thoughts. They've got views. They've got opinions. And I learned public speaking. That's what TV presenting is. And as a result of that, we used to have a show called the Alpesh-Patel. We used to have a segment called the Alpesh-Patel Minute, which I devised. And I devised it for no other reason than, well, two reasons. One is brand building. It was me looking at the camera for a minute. And secondly, ego. It was me looking at the camera for a minute. But the brand element of it, well, that's just TikTok. It's talking briefly, get that information across in a minute. The government asks, every time we're in our locked away meetings, they say, what would you say you're doing if the Secretary of State was in the elevator with you? And the elevator pitch, you got 30 seconds to explain which companies you've brought to the UK, why they're so good. That art of brevity and the ability to communicate quickly, you might think it's just, Alpesh, don't be silly. TikTok's just people dancing. It's actually a very good way to see, can you capture people's interest? It's a good way to experiment and learn, because guess what? The feedback comes back to you straight away. You'll see if you're getting followers and likes. This is not an advert for TikTok. But the point is hopefully well made. But if you can't do that and you are in the elevator with your boss or whoever else, and you don't have that ability, I'm afraid it counts against you. And it requires practice, it takes skill. But the number of times I've been in a position to be lucky, because when I was in the right place at the right time, I had the ability to communicate something quickly. That's how I became a visiting fellow at Oxford University. I was in a room full of people having to explain what I think UK-India relations should be. That communication skill, it just so happened that the president of one of the colleges was in that audience and said, you should stand for election as a fellow. Now, to me, that's important, might not be to you, fine. What I'm saying is whatever is important to you, they will come to you if you've got that ability to communicate, public speak, be brief. Writing, again, if you want to overachieve, write. Why? Because you're leveraging more than one person. More than one person sees it. If you're sitting in a room, you're leveraging 0 people. If you're having a one-to-one conversation, you're leveraging 1 person. If you write or you're on media and you're communicating, you're leveraging 100 or 1,000 or 10,000. How many things are going to come your way as a result of that? Now, again, this might not mean anything to you. It means something to me. The chief executive of London Stock Exchange, given that I'm in the investment business, means something to me. Okay, present me with this. And it's a plaque, and you probably can't read it. Anyway, might not mean anything to you. For my work on financial literacy, that means something to me. Okay, might mean nothing to anyone else, but it means something to me. How did that come about? So I write about it on LinkedIn and talk about it, and that opens up opportunities. That opens up networks. They say your net worth is determined by your networks, or you're the sum total of, you're the average of the 5 people you're closest to. You need to get those numbers up. How do you get those numbers up? If you're talking, you're on stage, you're leveraging communications, and more people are seeing it. Somebody starts taking notice and saying, that person's out there, let's move towards them. I'm afraid things like dress, posture, presence matter. I don't know if you listen to Radio 4, but this week there was a whole piece on, I think it was Start the Week. If you can find it, look at Start the Week on Radio 4. It was on charisma. People don't know that's actually a serious science that's studied at universities and among psychologists and sociologists and so on. It exists. It is something. Look at the, and I'll talk about it in a second, look at the components of it. And there's a Harvard Business Review I'll refer you to in a second. Look at the components of it. Look to develop parts of it. I was asked to talk about how disparate teams within government can work together. And my talk was predominantly about charisma and how to get people to do things that they might not want to do. Well, that's linked then to leadership. Why do people obey? Why do people obey? A lot of it's to do with charisma. It's not just because there's a stick and a reward. If you can get that element done, you'll get further. You'll get noticed in your job. These are soft skills which, when I've got people we're looking to hire, the more of these boxes they tick, rather than just, I interned here, I interned there, I interned there. Of course, I take all that as read. I've got this degree and I've got this. That's just taken as read. That is basic. If you haven't got those bits, but if you've got some of the other bits which come out, that's going to count for so much more. And again, I'm talking about overachievement. I'm talking about somebody with my mediocre skills overachieving. That's what I want. That's what I want for you. I'm not just talking about, yeah, I'm this good and I I'm a 6 and I got a 6. Great. No, I'm saying I'm a 6 and I got a 10. That's what we're talking about. Do learn Excel and PowerPoint skills. Honestly, it's a real pain in the ass if we've got to teach new employees anything like that. Research skills, finding answers. If I've got 2 members of staff and one comes to me and says, Alpesh, there's a problem with this, and the other one says, Mr. Patel, there's a problem. So that's a good start to begin with if they do that. There's a problem, but I've got 3 solutions depending on the budget you have, and this is my recommendation. Guess who gets ahead? Obviously. So that ability to research, find solutions, that attitude to think, come with solutions, put yourself in somebody else's shoes, which they say is a mark of intelligence. So I want those. Likability, boy, is that underestimated. I'll let you into a secret. It wasn't my intellect. I don't think that got me into Oxford. It was likability. And you might say, it's not coming across now, Alpesh, on camera. Trust me, back then, far more likable. Likability, I've been told by business leaders, I've been told by employers, that will forgive a lot of sins. My wife, when she's hired people, has said to me, between the 2, one candidate incredibly well qualified. The other one wanted it more, was more likable, more passionate. I think that person's going to do better in my team. And I've seen it time and time and time again. Because you're not just an isolated hire. You're a hire who's part of a team. If you're not likable, and we don't think you're going to be liked by others, I don't care whether you're topped your class in every subject. Okay, so that's one. And part of that likability is that ability for graciousness, civility, crediting others when credit's due to others. You know, finance isn't just sharp elbows and all the rest of it. Those skills, manners, that we think, well, what the hell's that got to do with the workplace? There's no place in my CV for that. No, those little bits when you're doing the internships and so on, those are the things that will get noticed. I've seen it time and time again, and they have helped me overachieve. I wasn't polite out of some Machiavellian sense of getting ahead. Thankfully, it came more naturally to me, but I also knew it was important. Leadership, the soft skills of leadership, start now. Start working on them. Look at the research papers on them. Harvard Business Review do a great series on that. Start researching what the elements of it are. And they're not often the elements you think. As you work through life, I won't go into this in much detail, but the Stoics will help you go through. I wish none of you have any problems ever in life. Sadly, it never works out that way. Look up the Stoics. Obviously get a good degree. I don't know if you come across Ali Abdaal. He got the top first in medicine at Cambridge. Now, it's not an easy degree to get a first in, and it's not an easy university, but he's well worth looking at. So those of you on the study side, thinking, the number of people who are just bad at judgment. I was asked by a political party this past year, if I would consider standing as an MP. So, go through the prospective parliamentary candidate, all of that kind of stuff. And I said, well, what are you looking for? And they said, we need to be assured that when you walk into a room, you're the cleverest person in the room. Now, you might say, well, so totally different to other MPs then. I said, what do you mean the cleverest person in the room? He goes, I don't mean you know the most. I don't mean you've got the highest IQ. I need to know, he said, because he was selecting people, that you have the best judgment in the room. When all the data and facts and information's laid out in front of you, you're confident out of everybody in that room, you have the ability to make the best judgment call. And that's telling. That's what in employment I want in my staff as well. If they can do that, makes life a lot easier. Have a look, therefore, at the book, Thinking About Anthony Flew. The number of people with just really bad judgment who can't even think straight. That's worrying. Now, as a barrister, your whole life is about thinking, rationalizing, judgment. So it was easier for us. Our training took us that way. University, the whole point of university is to take you down those routes. But watch out for that. Marry well. I won't go into more detail. I'm happily married, I should say, with a lovely, lovely wife. But marry well. Not only me, but Warren Buffett and others will tell you it's a key secret to success. And focus on issues of productivity, which again, I won't go into, but what I will do in the interest of time is just touch upon one or two of these issues. Please look up The Art of Persuasion. Start early. I started when I was about 12 years old. What it is that makes people do stuff. And the reason I started back then was I was 12 when it was 1983, and you're thinking Cold War. And I thought to myself, how the hell did the communists decide they want to potentially blow up the whole world? I blame them for everything. And what was it? And I thought, Karl Marx, some geezer, wrote a book, and that could see the end of the world? How powerful are books? How powerful is persuasion? How powerful is the written word? Look up persuasion. Look up these issues in your own time. Okay? Look up how you get people convinced, The Art of Persuasion. And it'll come across some of these things you'll have heard of. These are important. They're going to be important when you are working in finance or in whatever other profession you go into. The quicker you can get these things, or even when you're communicating with people, the more likely you're going to overachieve. The more likely you're going to overachieve. Learn about decision-making, like I said, and judgment. Learn about biases. Many of you will be familiar with these things, but look into them in more detail so you don't fall foul of them. And when others are falling foul of them, you're able to call it out. You're the one seen with better judgment. People with better judgment will get ahead. They will overachieve. They will rise to the top. Those are soft skills, which are incredibly, incredibly important. And actually, in a way, that's what university is trying to teach you when they're trying to get you in those essays that are being written. They're trying to make sure you're thinking clearly and you don't fall foul of these things. It's just that it's not sometimes overtly brought out. Well, I'm bringing it out and directly linking it to the world of employment and these types of biases, status of sunk cost, and all of these things. They will give you a leap ahead. You don't need an economics degree or a psychology one before you learn these things. These are incredibly important in my field of finance. They're important in every others. They're important in every time you communicate, every time you get something across. And they're actually also why university existed in the first place. But along the way, they've become disjointed from the world of employment. But it was to ensure that these things didn't happen. Beware of, and I might sound incredibly overconfident, beware of overconfidence and ego, men especially. So from all that I've said is not to say you just strut in there. Remember likability. Okay, the overconfident egomaniac is not going to be very likable. So be careful of that. On the charisma, this is the homework I'd give you. It's Harvard Business Review. Atonakis did research on this and how leaders, managers conveyed charisma and got ahead as a result. And what they found is you could have two people, one incredibly well qualified, the other one with charisma but mediocre in terms of everything else. And guess who got ahead? The charismatic one, which will answer a lot of the perplexing questions you have about how the hell did he get that job? There you go. Now you know the answer. Very often that is the answer. I've already mentioned, I won't go into this in much detail, but I've mentioned that have that bigger goal, that greater goal, that bigger purpose. And then as Steve Jobs said, join those little dots up. This bit doesn't matter. That bit doesn't matter. If you are looking at entrepreneurship, and I haven't touched much upon it, have a look at Crowdcube. You'll see you can download a whole bunch of business plans which have raised money. So if I'm in the field of entrepreneurship, obviously, I co-founded in UK the UK chapter of the world's largest entrepreneur mentoring organization called TIE. So have a look at TIE.org. It was born out of Silicon Valley. Its charter members include people like Bill Gates and so on. And I co-founded the UK chapter. Have a look at those business plans. If you're looking at entrepreneurship, have a look at those business plans on there. That'll save you, it'll save you 1,000 hours because it'll show you exactly what information you need to put in when you're looking at your business and how to evaluate it. When you look at somebody else's business plan and see, oh, right, okay, that's where I'm going wrong. Okay. And like I said, start saving if you can, even a little bit. So learn about ISAs and SIPs. Trust me, you start earlier, you'll end up richer sooner and you'll have FU money sooner to turn around when you want to at the age of 30 to the employer who's being an absolute DICK to turn around and say, F you, I'm out of here because you're independently wealthy. You'll thank me later for that. If you want to download those books because you want to know more about investing, you can go there. happy for you to do so. You don't need that bit. Don't need that bit. I started at university. That's me at university. Read Carnation, last exam, and perfected my investment strategy. So university is not too early. It is not too early to start all of this. It is not too early. And if you haven't seen Steve Jobs's lecture, he's the guy you should all be listening to rather than me. It's phenomenal. And when he's given it to the class at Stanford, I think he was giving it. That's me done. Happy to do Q&A.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alpesh. What I'll do, because I know that some students will have to get to class now, so if students have to leave at this point, feel free to, but thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, because as usual, I have a million, but we'll make sure we get through all yours. Someone has asked about investing, and I wonder if first you could talk a little bit more about your campaign for getting, I believe, 1 million people to learn about investing.
Yeah. So the reason that was set up was originally, obviously, as an employer, you're teaching your staff, you're bringing them in, and it's like a football academy. You know, you want people and shape them your way. So we're teaching them a lot of stuff, and then I kept getting messages from people saying, "Oh, can I do an internship? How can I learn? How can I get some work experience?" So I put it all virtually on the internet. All the materials that we teach people in a program, and it's completely free, including downloadable books, videos, articles by me. So we started off with what I was teaching my own staff and then built upon it. And the lucky thing was I had so much material because I've done the books, written the books, and all the rest of it. And it meant you could be a virtual intern. You could get daily updates on what I'm looking at. Literally, if you're sitting next to me in the office, I would send you the same document or article to read as if you're sitting next to me. So I do that on Telegram every day as well, and that's all part of the program. And you can do it whatever time you want, whenever you want. There's a certificate at the end, and we've had some employees come back to us, and employers come back to us and, can you confirm what they've learned? And because we can see at the back end what you've done and completed, I could say to them, yep, they've completed the whole program. This is what's in the program. I know because I created the program. But it was a bit of a fallback for some, and it helped on the social mobility because some people couldn't get the internships because they weren't necessarily well connected or whatever else, but it helped them get jobs in finance. And I've had some great feedback, which has been very sort of soul enhancing on that. But that's what that campaign is. It's partly to teach people how to invest, but also there's an internship program or work experience part on it. It's virtual. It was launched during COVID, which is why it's virtual. It still remains virtual because it's open to everybody in the world, and I couldn't have that many interns in the office.
Yeah. Fantastic. So I would encourage students to Google that, and if you've missed the link or anything, email me. I'll be able to forward that over to people. You've touched on it a bit there, Alpesh. A lot of our students come to us because they hear about networking all the time, but they don't know where to start. Yeah. And I think that, you know, it's difficult to know how to create a network if you don't know where you're starting from. Yeah. Could you speak a little bit about squaring that circle?
Yeah, I mean, being an introvert, I really am, and relatively shy, I hated the idea of networking, but I knew I had to grit my teeth and do it. So I try and go to as many events as possible, but it was still a bit ineffective because, you know, they can see from your face you're young, and, you know, the boss of the firm is not stupid. He's going to think, well, that person's young, that one looks a bit older and accomplished. Who am I going to speak to? So it became, you know, you sort of like grind along and, you know, hello, oh, it's a solicitor, flies, you know, onto them. And the world's changed now. So yes, going out to events and all of that's fine. I think it's pretty inefficient. I heard something about 2 weeks ago from, there's the new young chap on Dragon's Den. I don't know if you've seen it, and you've seen him. I think he made his money in NFTs or crypto or whatever. I've heard a couple of things from him, and I totally rate him. One of the things he said is, he goes, I hated networking. He goes, I didn't know anybody. I came from a working class background. I didn't have all those people and friends to networking anyway. He said, do you know what's networking today? Because when I post a video, when I write an article, when I do something on YouTube, and I might tag some people or I might share that to them, that's networking. That builds my network. That's them knowing who I am, what I do, what I'm about. And I loved it. I thought, he's absolutely 100% correct. That I hadn't realized that's what I'd been doing. When I wrote the book, that was networking. That's what got me the TV show. It wasn't that I was in a cocktail party with the global head of TV saying, hey, I'd really like a TV show, please. Do you think I was going to? Or that's how what got me the FT column. It was they'd seen the published work already. It wasn't that I met them, as I say, at some dinner party and sort of tried to say, here's my card. Can I please be in touch? Will you please mentor me or anything like that? It just didn't happen the way we think it does. It happened because they'd already seen what you have done and they'd seen you communicate it. So that's what networking is now, thankfully. And I had pieces, I said, now for my business, it matters, Investors Chronicle, Business Insider. And it's because they saw the videos on TikTok. Stupid. I mean, I feel stupid saying it. You know, great. I've got all these degrees and all the rest of it. And I'm like, TikTok, yeah, right. But no, that's networking. You know, that's literally what it is. And getting out there, speaking, trying to get speaking gigs. So, you know, when there is an event, if you've got any degree of experience, you can say to those organizers, look, I'd like to speak on this topic. Here it is. Break it down. And if you're on stage, you get them coming to you. It's a hell of a lot easier having 100 people coming to you after a talk than trying to mingle with 100 on the same platform. To network effectively, you need to be perceived as higher up because people want to network up. Nobody wants to network sideways or downwards. So you get on stage, and that's another way of networking.
Fantastic. As we're coming up to 10:02, we'll wrap up around then, so students can head off. But I've got two more questions that kind of a few people are asking. So part of our student population are coming to study with us after a period working. So we have quite a few mature students as well who are looking to maybe change career or progress in their sector and wanted to learn first. When they're going back into the workplace, applying for those jobs, do you think there's a way of kind of selling the fact that they have experience and a degree as a kind of competitive edge, or are there other things that you think they should be looking to do to kind of sell themselves against the younger graduates?
I think that experience element plus the degree is the perfect match because you've got the academics, you know, the degree part, and you've got the experience. The problem we have very often is because we're not a Goldman Sachs who are willing to pay, you know, 200 grand for people just who are more experienced. We're looking for the ones straight out of universities oftentimes. So what happens? They haven't got the experience. And if we go for the experienced ones alone, they might not have the sort of the foundational degree parts that we need, you know, that 3 years of education or whatever duration it was. I think it sells itself in many ways, is getting that across. I think you would, I don't want to say spin because that sounds fake, but you would tilt it towards the advantages. I can't imagine an employer looking at that as a disadvantage in any way whatsoever. From everybody I speak to, and including, you know, run this through other employers that I know around me and my wife and others in business, that experience part counts for so much, but mixing it up with the degree part, it seems the ideal mix. It seems great.
Fantastic. Okay, then to wrap up, I always like asking this question to people, even though it's a bit putting you on the spot. What advice would you give your younger self if you were doing it again? Is there anything that you would say, do more of that or less of that?
Work more productively, spend more time smelling the roses. I did a fair bit and I knew I should have, but yeah, work out how to work smarter, work out how to work smarter. So whether it's delegation or outsourcing or whatever else, just work that out more so you're doing less of the work and more of the oversight. But that's just for me. It'll be different for other people. All the other bits I've already mentioned, so I won't repeat those, but particularly the public speaking bits and all the rest of it. But I'd say work smarter. I've seemed to have figured it out now to the extent that I might have overdone it because I don't seem to be working hard enough now. So it's the other way around where I'm feeling a bit guilty that I'm not putting enough hours in. So I really want to start, sort of ramping up the business more. But yeah, working smart. And I've seen, like I said, it's taken me ages to find out how to work smarter. But yeah, work that out. The art of working out how to give people, how to delegate effectively and let them get on with it. There's a great book called Drive, and I'll leave you with that, which I'm sure many of you have come across. But yeah, which covers, you know, getting the right people with the right skills, giving them some autonomy to get on with it, and giving them a sense of purpose, and that'll help you create the best, biggest businesses in the world. Skills, autonomy, and purpose. You give that to people, you'll give them drive. And I wish I'd learned more of that, how to give that autonomy and purpose to others, rather than trying to do it all myself.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience and story there. There's so much that I know will benefit students massively. There were a lot of links mentioned. If students want to kind of hear those back, then you can access the recording of this again. I'll put it up on the VLE today. And please join me in thanking Alpesh Patel for joining us today.
Thank you, Alpesh.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a